Obviously, they want a captive audience. They go lobby billions of dollars to your state and federal legislature, and more we're seeing the government attempt to try to force vaccines on people, and they're coming out with hundreds of new vaccines. As you pointed out, medicine is shifting over almost entirely to vaccines because of the liability protection. This is a nightmare, but at the same time, record low numbers of people took the flu shot. It's starting to the same thing this year. How do you see the system striking back? I mean, they want to make their hundreds of billions, and because of Mercola and Infowars.com and all the other great people out there, folks are waking up. What do you see the establishment doing?
I don't know. I don't really get into those projections too much, but they're going to come out. I mean, they're going to want to try. I think the immediate threat is they're going to make it mandatory, and we're partnering with one of the top pro-vaccine safety sites in the world, which is the National Vaccine Information Center, NVIC.org. And we're really developing a massive consumer awareness component where we're lobbying for people to get together in their own local communities and hit their state legislators so they will prevent this from happening. But I think that's the next big battle, is to make sure right now that we don't shift to a mandatory vaccine system, because right now we have the freedom to choose not to get them, even though there are essentially the freedom is somewhat nullified if you have a child who's going to school, because they're going to prevent entry into most school systems unless you're vaccinated. But you can always homeschool, or you can go to a state that doesn't require it and has a philosophical exemption. So it's not as bad as it could be. That's for sure. If these mandatory vaccine laws get passed.
We're going to break here in a moment. We're going to come back and take a few calls for Dr. Joseph-Mercola. But briefly, what are you seeing on the front of GMO crops, cross-species chimeras, like the GMO salmon, the move to not even let us know if it's GMO in the stores?
Well, it's a big issue. I think we're going to be very successful in that. We're partnering with Jeffrey Smith, who was just on Dr. Oz yesterday, and got a very favorable response. But it's just providing people, the consumers can make the choice here. If they can vote with their pocketbooks, once they understand the issue, they can actually choose not to purchase this. And just like they did in Europe, once their profits go down, the people who are the industries who are manufacturing this, they will choose not to. So we can easily defeat that without any legislation, without any governmental intervention. It's a really simple process.
Amazing. Dr. Mercola is our guest. Briefly, as we go to break, what are some of the other things that you're looking at right now?
Well, it's one of the most exciting ones. Fluoride is a big issue, and then also mercury, which is another toxin, of course. And we're working with Charlie Brown for the Consumers for Dental Choice to help outlaw mercury amalgams in the United States, which is one of our big projects. So
free humanity is on the march, but Big Pharma and their witch doctor cartels, they're striking back. I'm Alex Jones. This is the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. Dr. Mercola, the naked body scanners, I mean, they've had all these top radiation experts, John Hopkins, you name it, Dr. Love come out and say, horrible radiation exposure. The pilots have said no. But now I've got a USA Today article, and we have a PrisonPlanet.com article by Paul Watson about the revolt, actually Steve Watson, the revolt by TSA agents, because it turns out there was a secret federal review of the radiation, and they've kept that secret. So there's been a quiet revolt of the TSA workers. Are they not the ones that are really being exposed, being around this day in, day out?
Well, I'm just not familiar with the specifics of how that machinery operates and the type of shielding they have on it, but there's certainly that potential. And it's certainly true for X-ray, regular X-ray technicians, that is a risk, and they have to be assessed. And I think I've read something online this morning that also addressed the maintenance of these machines, and for the most part, that information has not been released, which is another source of concern, because the machine may operate properly when it's maintained, but who's looking to make sure that it doesn't deviate from that, and that it's leaking significant amounts of radiation that it wasn't designed to?
Well, we've had radiologists on the broadcast several times, and we have like the New York Times saying that one machine has 50 times the radiation they first said. The other system, there's two, has 20 times at least. And you can look at the images released by the government. You can see the bones in the fingers. That's similar to a dental X-ray. So these are very high-powered. And, I mean, there's no doubt that it's a serious issue. It just shows how crazy this has gotten. Let's talk to Steve in Florida. You're on the air with Dr. Mercola. Go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Alex, and good afternoon, Dr. Mercola. Dr. McCullough, before I ask my question, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate what you've been doing. I get your daily e-newsletter, and I've been able to pass on so much of your information to people through emails or just talking to them, and just really appreciate all the work you've done, the documentation you've put out to back up what you're saying. The thing I wanted to ask is this. My chiropractor, who's very much on the same page with you as far as all the nutritional stuff and health stuff, he made a very radical statement. I wanted to see what you think about this. He said, there really is no such thing as disease. The problem with all these so-called diseases is you have a breakdown at the cellular level. So what is your take on that?
Well, thank you for your kind comments. And with respect to your chiropractor's comment, I believe it's kind of like day and night when you come to disease and health. And really the strategy that most physicians who are interested in improving people's health and focusing on wellness will focus on getting people healthy. You know, when I went to medical school, the focus was the exact converse. The focus is almost entirely exclusively on disease. So if you get a person healthy, it's really like light and darkness. You can't have darkness if there's light. Similarly, you can't have disease if you're healthy. So I think there's many elements of truth to what your chiropractor said. Just the perspective.
And I mean, obviously, we're designed to die. It's just you can extend that out. So, of course, everything goes to a cellular level. That's what we're made up of, is different communities of cell tissues working in concert together, directed by our brain.
Yeah, and obviously we're all going to die at some point, but that's one of my areas of interest is anti-aging, and I can tell you some of the most exciting research now is pointing to telomere lengthening, and telomeres are little end caps on your DNAs and pieces on the chromosome, and there's a basal rate at which they degenerate, and once you reach a certain limit, like 5,000 end caps, pairs, or base pairs actually, you die. So the exciting research is to actually lengthen these telomeres, and you can actually reverse aging, which we'll probably have in 20, 30 years.
Incredible. I want to hear about that when we come back. And he joins us now. I want to go to your phone calls, but he was bringing up life extension. Let's just do that in the next longer segment coming up because I want everybody to be able to hear that, and some stations don't carry this short segment. Very, very important information, and I know the elites are obsessed with this, and I know in rats and certain types of insects and worms, they've already doubled, tripled life expectancy. It's amazing. So we're going to discuss that with him coming up. But right now, let's go to Deborah in Maine. You're on the air with Dr. Mercola. Go ahead, Deborah.
Hey, Alex. Hi, Dr. Mercola.
Hi, Deborah.
I'm really nervous. I feel like I'm a lucky American who gets to talk to, like, Brad Pitt or something. It makes me sound like a geek, but I'm a huge fan, actually, of both of you. So thank you, both of you, for everything you do. Dr. Mercola, I want to ask you, I've always been pretty healthy. I have my own personal story with pharmaceuticals. I got off them because I was in a position of asking my doctor, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And they just didn't have an answer for me.
Well, they've always got more drugs to treat the drug-induced problems they've given you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was having epileptic seizures like 15 years ago. I was in my early 20s. And, I was never extremely smart or anything, but I just was like, something's wrong with this picture. And ultimately, the drugs made me feel like I was drunk and stupid. And so ultimately, I went into the doctor and said, I'm not taking these anymore. And anyway, so that was my own personal story. That's kind of how I saw the light. I read most of the books that you recommend on your website. My question, I'm so frustrated. I feel like I want to pull my hair out and hit people over the head with bricks. Why is it so hard for people? Like, what is so hard to understand?
About the system?
Well, just I find it so easy to be healthy.
I'll tell you what's going on. The average person just kind of goes through life and accepts what they're given, and they're good people, so they think if everybody else is good. They don't understand the predatory nature, but I appreciate your call. Let's get Dr. Mercola's take on what you were talking about.
Well, it's what I referenced earlier. I don't know if you heard that, but there's this massive media campaign and marketing that these drug companies, they're very successful at marketing. They have tens of hundreds of billions of dollars to purchase the finest minds on the planet, and they corrupt the system at every level, from the journals, the publications that are accepted in the journals, to the experts that are appointed to these federal committees, to universities that are really heavily subsidized by the drug companies and really in debt to them, so they were able to steer their agenda through these processes. So it's the media carries that, and it's no surprise that most people believe it. I mean, it's exactly what you would expect in this type of model, and it takes an extraordinary individual to get out of this. Someone like yourself, who's suffered complications of the recommendations and done your own independent research. It's there, but if you just listen to the media, you're going to be easily confused.
Well, that's a great point. And if you look at a lot of the big drug companies, they are the progeny of the original snake oil salesmen who were, mixing opium up with alcohol and saying this will cure your ails. And they don't have an incentive to want to prevent disease. They want to treat the disease. And I think it's that simple equation that really boils it all down. But one quick question. We're about to go to break, come back in one final long segment and take more calls. I'll ask the question now, then we'll come back and get your answer on the other side. But I also have seen the statistics in the Western world, Europe and the United States mainly, that neurological disorders, early onset of what they call, Alzheimer's type diseases, people having seizures. I mean, it's just epidemic. Epidemics in childhood cancer, something unknown 50, 60 years ago. Let's get your brief take on that, then life extension, and then a bunch of other phone calls. Stay with us.